John, now you're going to share the Reader's Digest version of having your stroke. I won't hear it, but I've heard it before.
That's fun. As a background to everyone, my name is John Kindschuh. I have 3 children, Ryan, who's 10, Maggie, who's 7, and Anna, who's 3. Cindy and I have been married like 10 years, so that's fun. I'm a lawyer at Brian K. Layton Paisner in St. Louis. Am I stroke sorry? I was 35 years old when I had my stroke. I am not being dramatic when I say everything changed in one day. It was September 12th, 2013, about 7 years ago. I was on paternity leave from work. My daughter had been born 1 month before my stroke, so I was at home with her. I was on the computer and I didn't feel good. I went to the bathroom. Actually, I crawled to the bathroom and I threw up like 20, 25 times. My wife heard me vomiting and she took me to the ER at the local hospital. In hindsight, I should have taken an ambulance, but we didn't know. I was at that hospital for about 2 days. They thought I had vertigo. I guess being a young stroke survivor never entered their minds. So when my speech started declining, they thought I was stroke, and then I took an ambulance to Barnes Jewish Hospital, the biggest hospital here in St. Louis, and my head was opened up. A surgery called craniotomy to relieve swelling in the brain. I was in the ICU for about 2 weeks. Marilee, can you hear me now?
I cannot hear you, but I know you're telling your story. And I'm just going to do the prompts that we had talked about, and you're doing fine. And I think I can read your lips a little bit, which is pretty darn good. How about that? Now I know you did not have a good prognosis, and I think you might have already talked a little bit about that. But maybe talk about that. I guess we were going to talk about that first year or so, and then I wanted to talk about your unique therapy, your hippotherapy.
Sure.
Just carry on. You're doing great.
So thanks. As Marilee said, the first few weeks were very grim. I was near death, and the first few months after that was very depressing.
People can hear
My
you.
stroke was in the cerebellum. It's right back here. It affects balance and coordination. At first, I couldn't talk. It is like having permanent laryngitis, or I guess being buried alive. I have a paralyzed vocal cord that still affects me to this day. Also, the stroke affected my right side. I am right-handed, so now I write with my left hand. Trust me, it's harder than this sounds. First in therapy, I worked on legibility. Then I worked on speed. And Marilee asked me about what are some of the therapies I did. The conventional ones. I did speech therapy, occupational, and PT. In addition to that, I did going back to work therapy, hand therapy, and driving therapy. I also did over 4 years of what they call hippotherapy or horseback riding. That helps people with balance issues, like kids with Down syndrome or autism, people like me who are struggling with balance. Most insurances won't pay for it, but I highly recommend riding horses to help you improve. Okay, Marilee?
I just figured out my microphone was plugged in, and that's why I couldn't hear you.
Oh, that's good.
I'm so excited. So I know you just finished talking about your therapies, and
Correct.
The hippotherapy I think is fascinating because it helps with your trunk and all of that. And I knew you would need a drink because I know you need to keep those vocal cords moist. So I know you.
Right.
I've seen you do things before. So I did want to talk about. I think the next thing we were going to talk about was the importance of having a caregiver by your side, a devoted caregiver. And you had 1.5 when you had your stroke, and you've got 4 caregivers now.
Oh, no. Yeah. Right. Cindy was my primary caregiver. She was vital for me. There's no other word. She was a saint. She cared for a newborn baby and a 3-year-old. For months, she was essentially a single parent to 2 dependent kids. She never gave up hope on me. She took care of my basic needs and comforted me and treated me with respect. I felt like a burden to her or an obligation. Would I become her cross to bear? Rang through my mind. As I got more independent, those feelings subsided. But I hope that I will never take Cindy for granted. I ask our audience if it is applicable to you. Do you ever take your spouse for granted?
Yeah, a spouse or any caregiver. And one of the things that always came back to me, because John and I had not been married very long when he had first a heart surgery and then some other things before the stroke. And I remember thinking, this is what committed love looks like. This is not romantic love. This is not hanging from the chandeliers love. This is committed love and devotion. And to me, that shift was so beneficial, because it wasn't that I had expectations of him from the traditional husband role, but it was that he could give back to me that love and devotion in a different sense, while I could give him that love and devotion from the caregiver role, particularly early on. But I remember always thinking, when young people are getting married and they romanticize all of that, and I'm not putting that down at all, but I'm saying there's many, many levels of love.
And one thing, verily, I want to encourage people to do is ask for help. Cindy said, I can't do this alone. She asked for specific things like driving me around, cooking meals, raking leaves, folding clothes, whatever. People are so happy to help out. We gave them just a little direction. That's it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think one of the things that I often have talked about is having that list of things that people can do when they say, hey, is there anything you need? Oh my gosh, it would be great if you could fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
So many times we can't, on our toes, we can't think of that. So having that as a caregiver, having that prepared list, and when the friend asks, what can I do? One of our watchers here, Chuck, was a supervisor for John and a co-worker at Caterpillar. And he coordinated friends to come over and talk with John, which helped tremendously with his aphasia. Once John was able, he and other friends, they would go out for lunch to get John out of the house and let me have an hour in my house by myself. Just saying.
Merrily, you bring up a great point. I am begging people to respect me, include me in the conversation. Sure, I talk slow, and many people marginalize me or don't show patience. But I want to be treated like anyone else.
Absolutely.
So that's a great point, because going out for meals, just talking to me, asking me what I think, instead of looking to my wife when I'm standing right there and saying, how's John doing?
Yeah.
You can ask me.
Yeah, and that's very, very common. And that once they recognize there's something that's not quite normal, whatever the heck normal is, it's kind of like, and because I talk fast and I think fast and I listen fast, it has taught me when I need to, I don't always do it, to slow down and to, and I will never, ever, ever forget when you told me Cindy was pregnant. You jumped up and I was listening on every word, and I know your pace. I know how you talk. So talking to you doesn't bother me because I know how you talk. But the joy, and waiting on every word for what that, you said, Mary Lee, I've got some exciting news. And I was like about to explode before you got it out. But you wanted to tell me, and I was thrilled to hear it. So I appreciated that. Which takes us to stroke camp. I want you to talk a little bit about stroke camp now, and what that means to you, because right now we're putting out a mission to get some money in so we can have stroke camp, because that's the funding for stroke camp didn't materialize because of COVID and no fundraising that we could do. But talk about what stroke camp means to you and your family.
Sure. Yeah, I know we have limited time, so I'll only mention 3 things, but I could go on and on. First, I would say when I attended the first time in 2014, I was shocked. I wasn't the only young person in the room who had a stroke. For the first time since my stroke, I was around people my own age. That was refreshing. Second, I feel normal there, like you said, whatever that means. One thing I really want to emphasize is people listen to me, waited for me to walk slower, whether it's caregivers, volunteers, survivors, whatever. I was one of the contributors to the camp, and that felt so glorious. And third, I thought my kids need to see other families who deal with stroke. I am glad my kids interacted with other people who know exactly what we're going through, and I thought this is invaluable. We have lifelong friends. My kids want to go back each year. It's such a joy as a parent to watch that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's fun for each the families, and it's not exactly the same number of families, but there is a handful of families that are always there. And it's fun for us to watch your family grow, and we were thrilled once again to have a baby when after Anna came along. We were thrilled to have a baby to rock, and now we're going to have another toddler to play with and to enjoy. But some of the relationships that are built during that weekend, it's almost like a weekend is like a family gets started, and it's a family reunion every year.
Right.
And the kids know that they're not alone, and they can kind of bond with each other and be normal. You're all normal during that weekend.
Yeah.
You're all.
I'm so glad you brought Anna up, because I want to talk about her to our viewers.
Yes.
Anna now is 3 years old. Cindy had her 4 years after my stroke. So in 2017, she said to me, I think you're ready to have another kid. I said, no. I had a stroke. She said, of course you did, but how long can you hide behind that? And she saw through this answer and challenged me to discern further. So I prayed about it deeply, and I decided I was ready to be a dad again. I didn't want the stroke to serve as a mask. I fully before the stroke, one night after two, and having another child post-stroke strongly suggests there is hope after a serious medical event. And if you'll indulge me, I want to share a story about when she was born.
Please do.
It was February of 2018. During her birth, I was crying profusely. I went to her doctor and said the last thing you need was a dad falling apart with so much going on. And he turned to me and said, I expect this. You're different now. And I thought, wow. And he said, you almost died. You appreciate life better now. For over 4 years, I wanted to be different. I thought the same was a good thing, and different maybe was not. And then Anna's birth ironically gave me insight to think I can accept my stroke. Being different may be good.
Being different is just fine, and I think that's a beautiful lesson. And you're absolutely right. Anytime there's a birth, and it's like it reminds you of how precious all of our lives are. And those of you that have had strokes have come closer to death than some of the other of us. So and I don't want to rush because I'm going to take as much time as we want. But you were able to work hard and return to some part-time work. And I do want you to talk a little bit about that, because I think that is helpful. And precursor to that, if you want to take another sip of water, everyone who had a stroke doesn't get a chance to go back to their former employment. Some can never go back to work, will not go back to work. You were blessed with an employer who honored and respected all of that, and you've been able to carve out once you've been able to carve out part-time. But what I want to say to survivors who are not able to go back to work and may be disappointed about that, think about volunteering, or think about a little something that you can do that's out of the norm to feel like you're giving back, rather than just woe is me. But because you have a beautiful story, and I'll let you tell it now.
Yeah, sure. I think that's vital for you to say merrily. It took me 5 years and 5 months to return to work. I ask people listening, would you be patient for 5 years for something? During that time, I had to redefine my identity. So many of us work and assume that's our identity. Yes, I'm a lawyer. But it's interesting, during that time, I thought, wait, I'm a dad, a Christian, a volunteer, a church community member, things like that. I'll never say I write off the battle. I'm a lawyer again. Sure, it's part of me, but not the most important
That is
part.
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, that is not the most important.
Yeah.
I like that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And one thing I want to say, my return to work was a multi-year process.
Okay.
Returning to work is not that simple. It's a long-term goal. I had to meet short-term goals just to be eligible to go back, like being understood on the phone, taking stairs, handwriting, typing, multitasking, problem solving, being an asset to my employer. And all those things had to line up before I ever approach work. So this is important. It's not as simple as just go back to work. It's a lot of things that we may take for granted.
Yeah, thank you for that list, because I think and you are proving that it's not all or nothing. You are not all of the lawyer that you were 10 years ago. You
No.
never will, you probably never will be all of that lawyer, but that's okay. You are still productive and you're still doing some of the work that you love, but you're also honoring all those other roles that are a part of who you are in your soul.
Marilee, I'm so glad you said that. Just last week, opposing counsel on some case said, "You're the best lawyer I've ever dealt with. You treat me with respect. You don't nickel and dime me on money." And she said, "You know what's important?" So, and my clients and partners at my firm, whoever, say I have a perspective that other lawyers don't. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, life's experiences have so much to do with it. Well, I as we wrap up here, I'm going to have you on again because you're so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to have you on again in a few months. But anyway, maybe I'll have you on at family camp Friday morning.
No, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll show you doing water ballooning or something.
Yeah. Or zip lining. Yeah.
No, and what I would love to ask for you to wrap up a little bit about, I guess you've done a little bit of advising for survivors, but any last thoughts of advice for survivors, and then any last little words of wisdom, things that we can take with us, whether we are a survivor, a caregiver, a professional individual who is watching these videos stay on our Facebook page for a long time. So what are your words of wisdom, and maybe a little cheerleading along with it?
There are three things that come to mind. First, I think reframing the question, what can I do, instead of what I can't do, is important. Why I shifted my perspective. Well, yes, I can read, write, understand, mow the yard, whatever. Sure, I can't do things like play sports, but does that matter? No, I'm here. I'm alive. I'll be in people's lives. So that's important to reframe that. Second, I'd say discover new purposes. I know that's easier said than done, but I am starting to truly accept what happened to me. How am I doing that? By finding new things to do. For example, for better or worse, I became an expert in stroke. I have spoken 62, now 63 times about stroke. I am writing a book about stroke recovery. Whenever that will be published, I could go on and on, but instead of running from the stroke, I'm embracing it. And finally, I would say I choose to be positive. In the ICU, when I couldn't talk or walk or do anything, I had two choices. First, I could be angry or mad or whatever word this stroke happened to me. Or two, I could be positive. I did not want to live angry my entire life, so I chose the latter option. I had no idea that decision in 2013 would affect me now in 2021. I learned we cannot control the circumstances that fall on us. However, we can control our reaction to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage people, whoever, wherever, to choose the positive approach. That's something you can do.
Thank you for that. And I've often said, because my husband has had so many health issues, and the one thing he's never said, why me, be mad at God or any of that. It's kind of like, it is what it's, and that's kind of a silly saying, it is what it is, but it happened. And he always had goals. He wanted to be able to say the first one, we had an interview earlier today, and he said, I just wanted to be able to say my wife's name because he couldn't pronounce my name for a year. And he would sob and cry because he couldn't say my name. He always had goals. He always had things that he wanted to do. But I've been blessed with that attitude because I know many folks struggle with that. So thank you for that good, positive advice. So,
and Marilee, I'm glad you said that. The question, why me, is probably permeating through our audience. One therapist said that's maybe the wrong question.
mm-hmm.
Ask why not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she said maybe that's what you need to get over this big speed bump.
Yeah.
To think, what can I do about it?
Very good.
And I like that attitude.
I do too. Yeah. Well, John, thank you. I'm hoping to have you on again. Maybe we'll hone in on one particular topic.
Sure.